Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're looking at how to deal with errors in context managers. The exit method, the dunder_exit method of a context manager has three arguments: exe type, val, and tb. These stand for exception type, exception value, and exception traceback. We're going to look at exactly what they are in just a moment. And these things exist because during the execution of a context manager, it's possible that an error will occur. For example, if we go to our database.py into the add book function, we could encounter an error when we try to insert a book with a name that already exists. In that case, an error will be raised by SQLite, and before it crashes our program, it will go to the exit method. Okay? So even if an error is raised, we'll still call the exit method first, and it will have some values here. And then once the exit method has finished running, the error will continue to be raised and will crash our program, unless it's handled in a try except. If no error occurs, all of these have none value, so all of these are none by default. So here's some sort of stuff that we can do in exit. Of course, we can close the connection, even though an error happened. Otherwise, we would have to use a try except here. So earlier on, when we got an error in inserting a book, we didn't actually close the connection because the program crashed before that. Now, even if we get an error on the execute, we still go here and we commit and close. We can close the file even though an error happened, same thing as here. We can print something to the console when something finishes executing, particularly if an error happened. We can say, hey, we ran this context manager, but an error happened during its execution. We can destroy anything we depended on in the code in the context manager. So for example, we could destroy this connection, we could destroy a file handler, we could do anything we want. Remember that context managers are just that. They are functions used to manage the context, and Python gives us some syntactic sugar, the with statement, that allows us to do these things, but they're just functions running at the start and at the end. It just so happens that the exit function gets called even when there is an exception, an error, which is pretty much the same as a try except block. You can do this stuff manually without using context managers, but it's probably going to end up being less readable. And so this is probably the better choice, and Python really likes these context managers. These add readability and reduce repetition in your code, which is good for one of programming's core tenets, which is don't repeat yourself. Okay. Let's go and set a breakpoint inside line 14, the dunder_exit method here of our context manager, and then we are going to run our app. We're going to add a book, which is going to be clean code, and then we're going to add the same book again. Notice how now we get an integrity error here. It says, unique constraint failed, books.name. And that's in here in the SQLite 3 integrity error happened when we tried to execute this thing. Now, let's go ahead and debug our app this time. And once again, go to the console. Oh, I think we may have... Oh yeah, sorry. This has ran. We don't need to do that. Let's go to A, type clean code. And now notice how our code stops in here. We can go over to the debugger and see that we have a couple of values for the execution value and execution traceback. We've got the traceback is this traceback object, and the value is this unique constraint failed on book's name. So when we have an exception happen, the exit function gets called, but it has some values in it. I wondered if exe type has any value. Yes, it does. This is the integrity error that we got earlier. This is the type of the error that was called. So as you can see, these are not none anymore. They have some values. So what we can do is we can stop our program and we can say if exe type or exe val or exetb self.connection dot close without committing anything. Otherwise, commit and then close. The reason for this is that if an error happened, it's possible, although unlikely, that our database has been left in an inconsistent state, a state that is not so good. For example, if you try to enter some data first and then you want to enter something else that depends on the previous data, but you get an error when that happens. So what to do is, if there is an exception happen, close the connection, otherwise commit and then close. Notice how if extype or exeval or exetv just means is not none. These are all the same thing. Extype is not none, or exeval is not none, or exetv is not none, can be shortened to this. So feel free to use this type of syntax instead. Remember, the OR statement gives you the second value if the first one was falsy. None is a falsy value, so this gives you exeval. Exeval is none, which is also falsy, so that gives you exetb. Exetv is also none, which is also falsy, so then you go into here, because this whole thing evaluates as exetb, which is false. Okay, then if not, you run the else, which commits and closes the connection. So that's it for this video. I just wanted to show you what the exit method parameters are and what type of things they hold. And the type is the exception type, that's the class of the exception. The value is any arguments that were passed to the exception when it was raised. Normally that's a description message. And the TB is the traceback of the exception. That's where the exception happened in all the lines and all the files where it was seen. So that's it for this video. Hope you've learned something, and I'll see you on the next one.